Chingaon to Amarkantak. On the waking in the morning, we found our bedding wet with dew. How we managed to sleep in such cold was quite surprising. Notes of the melodious songs from the previous night still echoed in our hearts. If any house in the village had been burgled that night, we would be arrested. But no complaints had been lodged. We left Chingaon. In Barasha, we dropped letters in a post box that was hanging on a tree. The letters took a long time to reach home, like the light from a distant star. Crossing a hill after Barasha, we came face to face with the Narmada. From there it was a short walk to Jogitikariya. The next day we reached Lukampur. There we found such a neat and clean hut that we stayed for 2 days. We needed a bucket to fetch water from the river. I went to borrow one from a neighbor and the housewife asked, "How many people are you, sir?" She wanted to know our exact number so that she could give us food accordingly. I said, "We don't want food, only a bucket." I got the bucket. I fetched water and returned to the hut. A little later, a villager came along and told us a mad woman used to live here. Some days ago, she went off somewhere. Seeing the door open, I thought she had returned. At first, the word mad made me uneasy, but later I reflected that we too must be a trifle insane. Otherwise, why would we leave our comfortable homes in order to wander about in the wilderness? We could hear the Narmada all night long. She was with us day and night. Dindori, a large town, lies on the other bank. Sunday is the weekly market day. People from nearby villages cross the Narmada in great numbers to reach the market, shop, and cross back in the evening. The sight of them wading through the river gave me much pleasure. Eager to watch them crossing the river, I sat there from morning. At first, men and women came along only in ones and twos. Then, from noon, a continuous flow began. First of all, they paid their respects to Mother Narmada by kneeling and bowing, then set forth into the water. As they reached the main stream, where the current is in full force, bundles were secured on heads, small children on hips, the loads on carrying poles adjusted for balance. Then, holding each other's hands, they forded the river. The water is not so deep, but there is a strong current and the stones are uneven and slippery underfoot. One must cross with the greatest care. I asked someone, "When can you start crossing on foot?" "After the monsoon, as soon as the muddy water has cleared." Asked about the way ahead, he replied, "You probably think that as you approach Amarkantak, it will be very mountainous and full of forests. But it's quite the opposite. You will hardly find any forests or hills. Of course, on the last day there will be a steep climb up to Amarkantak." We were off again at dawn. The rapids at Ramghat revived memories of the Sahasradhara. They are different in that the rapids at the Sahasradhara stretch for a long way, while here the flock of rapids is herded into one place. Countless streams fall from a single large level horseshoe-shaped rock. The falls are very small. If there were only one or two, they might have escaped notice, but there were so many of them. Each is like a fawn. One feels an urge to take on one's lap, to fondle and caress, then let it go to skip and bound as much as it likes. Just as we were about to leave, I suddenly noticed the sky and stopped amazed. There was the moon at high noon, misty and low on the horizon but looming clearly over the open plain. Does the sun have the courage to show itself in the middle of the night? The moon is a wandering minstrel with no fixed home. It disappears at night and reappears in the day, sometimes a full and perfect circle, sometimes a fine line. At times setting in the morning and rising in the evening, at others setting in the evening and rising in the morning. It leads a life beyond the confines of space and time. Our lives should have both the discipline of the sun and the playfulness of the moon, the strict observance of rules and the intoxication of joy. It was late evening when we reached Dudhisangam. We spent the night in a hut built by an old Baiga man for the use of pilgrims. The old man lived with his 10-year-old granddaughter. There were no other houses around, nor any playmates to keep her company in the solitude. Utterly lonely, she sat quietly or kept herself occupied with some task. At an age when she should have laughed and played, she had become grave and serious. An accursed maiden from some ancient legend. Her broad, sad, aboriginal face still haunts my memory. We resumed our journey in the morning. A few wandering white clouds could be seen in the autumn sky, their shadows falling on the earth. A solitary deserted path. The villages too were villages only in name. 15 to 20 cottages here, 5 or 10 there. That's all. Mere hamlets, really. We arrived at Bijapuri around noon and stopped to cook lunch on a villager's veranda. Yadavendra began cooking. Tired, I lay down for a while and promptly fell asleep. When I woke up, I had very high fever. We had been working all day long for several days. It was the fever of exhaustion. We would have to stay there overnight. Unable to eat anything, I drank a glass of milk and slept again. When I woke in the morning, the fever had gone, but I was very weak. However, after eating some homemade sesame sweets we had with us and drinking some water, I felt much better. We picked up our bags and went on, through Basantpur to Kanchanpur. We had been walking through the Sadol district for the first few days. The local inhabitants probably had literary tastes. Their villages were called Basantpur, Kanchanpur, Chandan Ghat and Kasturi. The name of the town was Puspurajgarh. Doubtful of finding a place to stay in Kanchanpur, we asked a boy from a nearby village about accommodation. "Don't worry," he said. "If you don't find any place here, I will take you to my village. My village is very big. There are 27 houses, but we found a place to stay in Kanchanpur." The next morning we fell in with a trader. There was a woman with him too. They were both going to Bilaspur, where it was the weekly market day. The dealer would set up a stall to sell cloth and the woman another, selling bangles. We had set out for Bhimkundi, but wanting to see the village market, we decided to join the trader and his companion. However, they walked very fast and pushed on ahead. It was afternoon when we arrived in Bilaspur. We had walked 20 kilometers. 2 days ago it was hard to walk even 10 steps because of the fever. Today I had walked 20 kilometers. Where had the strength come from? There is a secret storehouse of energy in every person, which is kept in reserve for special occasions. The long walk today had drawn on this reserve fund of strength. Bilaspur is a rather small village, completely surrounded by hills, steeped in greenery. But what a modest market! Apart from the 4 or 5 stalls selling cloth, the total value of all the goods in the market was not even 500 rupees. We left Bilaspur in the morning. Bhimkundi came into sight from the top of a hill. Mist was rising from the fields below and spreading in wavering wisps, as if incense smoke were rising from the earth. The Narmada was getting smaller day by day. At Bhimkundi, the river was almost like an infant. It would take only half a minute to cross, and it was hard to find water deep enough to dip a pitcher. Clearly, Amarkantak was not far ahead. From now on, we had to walk with great care so as not to cross the Narmada, mistaking her for a tributary stream. We stayed for the night in Ghughawa. From there on, we found an irregular track through a forest of sal trees in the mountain valley. In Farisemar, we saw beautiful decorative artwork on the walls of a Baiga's home. The Baiga women's bodies were generously decorated with tattoos. At Damgar, it appeared as if Mount Mekal had lifted the Narmada in his arms. The steep ascent to Amarkantak began here. It took a couple of hours on the uneven track to climb up to Kapildhara. Kapildhara, the Narmada's first and highest waterfall. Going down to stand at the foot of the falls, I observed it from top to bottom. The raging sound of the cataract reverberated in the gorge. The strong current of the river sprinted between the boulders at the base. Suddenly, I shouted, "Narmada!" An echo reverberated throughout the valley. Ha! Some people stood behind the waterfall. There is a cavity at the bottom of the fall where one can stand. Spectators all around, the fall in the middle. Very few waterfalls provide such viewing facilities. We also went down to see the lower falls of Dudhara. The falls there were so beautiful that we stayed overnight and resumed our journey to Amarkantak after bathing in the morning. In Amarkantak, we found lodging at Kalyan Dasji's ashram. Leaving our things there, we went to the spring, the source of the Narmada. The third day of our stay there was Diwali. Yadavendra and I had resolved to celebrate Diwali here. The ashram was being built at a lavish expense, but Kalyan Dasji himself wore only a loincloth. He said, "This loincloth is my entire estate." He had lived for several years in the Himalayas, then completed the pilgrimage around the Narmada. We enjoyed his warm hospitality for 3 days. We went to the source of the Son river too. It is not far from the Narmada. It is as thought they are two halves of the same being, each with a different destiny. The Narmada flows west, the Son flows east, never to meet again. In the evening on Diwali, women lit diyas and set them afloat at the Narmada spring. In the dark of the night, the saffron glow of the twinkling lights could be seen from afar. I could not resist. I asked a woman for a diya, lit it and set it afloat on the spring. Then, from the depths of my heart, I exclaimed, Mother Narmada, I have lit a diya in your honor. In exchange, please light a diya in my heart. There is immense darkness within, and no way to dispel it. Only you can make it go away. This is all I beg of you, Mother.